It's always a pleasure to see some of us come together to read. Hi, Harmant. Uh, that's a new person. Harmant, have you joined the session before? Have you been here before? Hi, Sneha. Okay. Carrying forward Sandeep sir's philosophy of even if one person comes, we read. But today we have more than one person. We have 12 people, and it's always a pleasure to see each one of you. And it's a reminder that we all have to read together because sometimes during the week, in all these celebrations and everything, like Meenakshi was just mentioning, you can forget to reflect. So before I start reading today, and since we are reading a chapter called Motivation, I would like to remind all of us about the motivation with which we are entering 2026. For some of us, it may not mean much. A new year, a new day may not mean much because a lot of you maybe live in a lot of reflection in general. But let's try to remind ourselves of the motivation with which we are working every day, with which we are doing things for others every day, for things we like, things we do not like. What's your motivation? And that's the chapter we are reading. And if any of you would like to share what's your motivation to do things for yourself for this year, why would you like to read? What's your motivation to read? It would be lovely to hear that, hear some of the responses.
Well, I read because I like reading, basically. Let's start with that. Of course, then, of course, comes with it the fact that I come to know of various viewpoints, and that helps me reflect on my viewpoint, change it, adapt it, and all those things. So that is there. But basically, I read because I don't remember I was very young when I started reading, and I've been reading all through. The amount of reading that I do might have changed, and the type of literature I read now might have changed as compared to what I read in my school days. But reading has been constant. Okay. Of course, during my school days, I would read every editorial of the newspaper, anything that I got, was left in front, any literature, any writing which was in front of me, I would just pick up and start reading. Read lot of romantic stories and also classics like Charles Dickens and R.L. Stevenson and Shakespeare's work, because by 10th we had done Merchant of Venice in its original form. I was an ICSE student, so I read all those things. Now, of course, the taste has changed, and now I read more of philosophical and metaphysical books, and of course these books which are these are also philosophical actually. So the interest might have changed, but I enjoy reading. I really enjoy reading.
Thank you, Meenakshi ji. So, Meenakshi ji's motivation to read is really her own childhood, her own habit, and the joy of reading. Thank you so much. आप में से कोई और भी शेयर करना चाहेगा? Why, what's your motivation for this year? इस साल का आपका मोटिवेशन क्या है? आपका रीड करने का मोटिवेशन क्या है? स्वाति जी, रीना जी, anyone? जुगजीव सर, विक्रम सर, नेहा, साक्षी, Kunal. If any of you would like to share, what's your motivation for the year, for maybe even today?
Uh, right now, is like the time for New Year resolutions, right? So
Mm.
I just want to move to a scene where it's very consistent. So that's my thing, as to make it consistent is what I'm trying to do. So that's sort of my resolution for the year.
That's beautiful to hear. Thank you, Jagjeev sir.
I would say for Swati, Reena, and all these people, I think their motivation to read would be if they want to know the world. If they really want to know it, then they need to start reading. You can't travel all through the world, and you cannot always look at the pictures and decide what the world is like. ओके, मेरा इनको एडवाइस रहेगा क्योंकि मैं इनको मैं इनके साथ काम भी करती हूँ कि थोड़ा थोड़ा पढ़ना शुरू कर दे अगर दुनिया को पहचानना चाहती हैं, देखना चाहती हैं और पढ़ना चाहती हैं। पढ़ने से अच्छा कोई एक्सपीरियंस नहीं होता। जब कोई अच्छा ऑथर कोई चीज लिखता है, लिखते हैं या लिखती हैं, तो वो जिस तरह से डिस्क्राइब करती हैं वर्ल्ड को, है ना, उससे बढ़िया एक्सपीरियंस कोई नहीं रहता है। तो मैं तो इनको बोल ही रही हूँ कि आप लोग पढ़ना शुरू कर दीजिए। अनफॉर्चुनेटली बंदरजुड़ में ऐसे कोई लाइब्रेरीज या किताब का दुकान नहीं है, लेकिन आजकल तो ऑनलाइन सब चीज अवेलेबल रहता है, फोन में पढ़ ही सकते हैं सब। तो मेरा तो कहना रहेगा अगर ये पूछेंगी तो मैं इनको किताब का नाम भी बता दूंगी, है ना। हाँ, इनको हिंदी ट्रांसलेशन शुरू में चाहिए होगा, लेकिन अपने जिस लैंग्वेज में है उसमें पढ़ने का मजा ही एक और कुछ अलग सा होता है। अब मैं एक एग्जांपल दे रही हूँ, रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर का ये जो गाना है, जो दी तो डाक सुने क्यों ना आशे, शायद टैगोर का ही है या नजरुल है, मुझे इतना याद नहीं है। तो क्यों ना आशे ताले एकला चल चलो रे, अब उसको हिंदी में भी ट्रांसलेट कर, अगर तुम्हारे पुकार पे कोई नहीं आता तो अकेले चलो रे, तो बड़ा अजीब लगता है ना। उसका जो रिदम एंड फ्लो बंगाली में ही आता है। तो मैं नहीं कह रही कि सभी को बंगला आ जाएगा या सभी को कुछ आ जाएगा, लेकिन अगर ये इंग्लिश में पढ़ सके और समझ सके तो बहुत बढ़िया होगा, वर्ल्ड को पूरा देख लेंगे। वो मेरा कहना है। या हिंदी किताब है तो हिंदी में ही पढ़ें।
Thank you, Meenakshi ji. Since we all would have liked to get a chance to say, अगर आप में से किसी का भी टर्न आपको लगता है कि आपको अनम्यूट करके नहीं बोलना है, आप हमेशा मैसेज भी लिख सकते हैं चैट पर या फिर व्हाट्सएप पे हमारी ब्रूइंग नॉलेज कम्युनिटी पर। हमने लास्ट वीक मिस रत्ना जी से मिले थे, वन ऑफ द ऑथर्स फ्रॉम देहरादून, और उन्होंने स्टोरी टेलिंग का हमारे लिए एक स्टैंडर्ड रेज किया। हमें स्टोरी टेलिंग से, ह्यूमर से परिचित किया। She introduced us to a lot of humor and good storytelling during the session. And I think with her session, I would like to take the thread of motivation to read. And that's what we continue from our last week's reading about motivation as a chapter from this book called What Did You Ask at School Today? We are mostly through with this book with just a few more chapters left. And it would be wonderful if all of you can engage with these ideas at your own level, at the classroom level, even in your interpersonal relationships. So I invite all of you to please read along and drop questions, drop responses, ask each other questions. Thank you. So we will start reading with this subtopic called classroom environments. One important factor influencing a student's motivation to learn is the motivational system in place or the classroom environment. Psychologists broadly classify these environments as competitive, cooperative, or individualistic. All three systems can create the motivation to work, but for different reasons. And these different sources of motivation can have consequences for the way students approach learning. Here is a brief summary of the three distinct classroom environments. In a competitive classroom, the students' attention is focused towards their peers' performance, and self versus other comparisons provide the motivation to work. This leads students to think in terms of ability. Am I smart enough to do this? How did I do? How did he or she do? I don't want to make a mistake. Avoiding failure becomes all important, which means avoiding challenging situations. Paradoxically, some students may avoid trying hard in competitive situations because if after all that effort they do not succeed, everyone will assume that they do not have the ability. Not trying, therefore, is one way of failing with honor. In a cooperative classroom, the student's attention is focused towards the performance of the group as a whole. Students think in terms of odds, and a sense of moral responsibility provides the motivation to work. Are we working hard enough? I ought to be contributing enough to the work. My friends want me to work hard. Intentions become all important, and students evaluate each other more in terms of willingness to work rather than ability. Equally, peers encourage each other's efforts. Trying is because you owe it to your group mates. In an individualistic classroom, students work completely independently, and each one's work and progress are unrelated to those of others in the class. They are led to think in terms of mastering goals for themselves. I know I'm improving. I am given a chance to correct my mistakes, and my teacher wants me to try new things. Self versus earlier self comparisons may be heightened, and these provide the motivation for work. Trying is for improving and bettering one's own earlier achievements. A few interesting contrasts need to be highlighted here. When a student is in an individualistic environment, she can focus on the question, how shall I do this? I need to make a plan. But in a competitive environment, even if she tries hard, she may not succeed since success is defined as doing better than other students. So she must ask herself, if I try, will I succeed? The answer to this lies in her judgment of her own ability relative to the other students. So, motivation to learn will be dependent on that crucial judgment, which seems such a waste and a pity. This is what psychologists call the double edged sword of effort. Effort could lead to success, but if it leads to failure, there is shame and a loss of self esteem. Thus, in competitive environments, difficult tasks which could lead to failure will be avoided. One caution: the descriptions above of the three types of classrooms are almost certainly oversimplified. Even within one classroom, not all students will interpret the goals of the class in the same way. The teacher may ask his students to work together, yet a few of them opt out and work alone. Another teacher may expect his students to work independently, yet two or three of his students begin to collaborate with each other. And we all know of students who, in spite of being in competitive classrooms, ignore these compulsions and work simply to master the material. My question here for all of you is, can we all reflect back on our own growing up years during our schooling? Can all of you please reflect on how were you growing up in your school years? Did you notice this difference when you're reflecting back? And which of these environments out of the three did you resonate with right now?
I think if I enjoyed this subject, it was competitive, right? Especially things like maths. You wanted to finish the sum and sort of give the answer quickly. So, I mean, but I think it depended on whether I liked the subject or not. If I didn't like it, then just duck it. Stay out of this thing. But if I like the subject, then competitive.
And Jagjeet sir, can I ask you one more question followed up by
Yeah.
what you said? So, did your interest in the subject depend on the competitive environment? Or did you interpret that math is about competition and answering quickly, so you associated math with that? Is it one thing after the other, or is it intertwined?
I don't know. I mean, I liked the subject. I was reasonable at it, and somehow there was. I mean, there was this. It was a competitive thing in class, but it wasn't. I mean, it didn't matter. What I meant was that if I answered it, and I mean, some next time somebody else would answer it first. So I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't like a life and death thing. But I don't know how it started. But I think I don't know. I can't really figure out how it happened. But it wasn't something which was sort of negative in any way. I mean, it wasn't that you were desperate to sort of do it. Be the first and get it right. But it just felt good if you did. And
Yeah,
I don't
which
know.
was mostly the competitive.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I
Children
myself,
do
as
like
a teacher, also noticed that some of these third grader students that I taught, they loved math and they loved doing their tables and they wanted to do it faster than their friend. So I'm just trying to think if that was cooperative in a competitive environment.
children do like answering, like being the first one to answer, and you know answering it correctly. Both is important for them. But I don't. I mean, I've never seen children getting nasty to each other because of that. They like doing it. They enjoy being the first one to answer. But like Sir said, there was not. It's not as if it was heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking for them. If they're unable to answer or they get the answer wrong or something. Nothing of that sort. They simply enjoy doing it. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm the first one. I'm the first one. I'm right, and it ends with that. That's it. Nothing beyond that.
thank you. I Akansha, if you are able to hear me and if you are able to unmute yourself, I would invite you to maybe share with us, with our group, how do you feel as a student in these three environments that we just read about? There is cooperative, there's individualistic, and there is a competitive environment. Which of the three environments have you most noticed in your own school environment? Akansha, are you able to hear me?
Uh, I have to read.
No, I'm asking. We just read about three environments: competitive, cooperative, and individualistic environment in the classrooms. And
Okay, okay.
which of the three environments have you personally felt you have experienced more of in your own schooling? Did you get my question?
Yes, yes, I get the question, but I didn't get the reading. I was being
Okay,
sorry.
did you
I'll
join
focus
late?
now.
No problem. No problem. All right. We'll move ahead. The choice of which system a class follows is influenced by the school's educational philosophy and ultimately by societal values. But it is the teacher who sends powerful motivational messages to her students in the kinds of expectations she communicates. In the next section, we'll look more closely at the specific teacher behaviors that influence student motivation. Teacher behaviors and student motivation. As a teacher, are you a controller or an autonomy supporter? Read on to find out. Sarah is an average student. During the past 2 weeks, she has been looking dull and has not been participating in class. She has not been completing her homework, but whatever work she does is accurate. A phone conversation with her mother did not give any useful information. If you were Sarah's teacher, what would you do? Option 1. Tell her the importance of finishing homework since she needs to learn this material for her good. Tell her that she doesn't have to finish all the work now and see if you can help her work out the cause of the problem. Option 3. Make her stay after school until the homework is done. Option 4. Show her how she compares with the other children in terms of homework and encourage her to catch up with the others. Can all of you see this on the screen? And if any of you would like to drop in the chat, what option would you choose? Please drop it. And if you would like to unmute yourself and tell me which option would you pick for Sarah, for Sarah's teacher, please do that. Meenakshi ji says option 2. Akansha, what would be your option?
I also think option 2 and option 4 is also right.
Okay. Vikram sir, what would be your option? Jugjeev sir, what would be your option?
2, I think, in the lead up to the question, I mean, it seems that she's doing worse than what she normally does. So there must be some reason.
Yeah. Akansha, why would you pick option 2? Jugjeev sir clarified his stance. Why are you picking option 2? Akansha, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I pick up option 2 because it is saying that she doesn't have to finish all of the work now. So she'll not get all the pressure at one time. She can break the work in small parts.
Yeah,
And I can also help her.
right. Thank you. Decky and his colleagues constructed a test of teacher behaviors in the 1980s with 8 short stories like the above. For each story, they gave 4 options to correspond to 4 styles of teacher behavior. In the story above, option 3 is a highly controlling behavior. The teacher decides what is good for the student and makes her do it. Option 1 is moderately controlling. The teacher decides what is best and tries to get the student to see it his way. Option 4 is moderately supportive of the student's autonomy. The teacher encourages the child to compare herself with her peers so that she will be motivated to solve the problem. Option 2 is highly supportive of the student's autonomy. The teacher encourages the student to arrive at her own solution to the problem. Decky and other psychologists who have used this questionnaire over the years find that autonomy supportive teachers who follow option like 2 above, like all of you did, have students who are more intrinsically motivated in school. But what kinds of behaviors does support for autonomy translate to in the classroom? In a study conducted by a psychologist named John Marshall Reeve, one adult was given 10 minutes to solve puzzles with the help of another adult who was already familiar with the puzzles. Several such student teacher pairs were studied and their behavior videotaped for later analysis. Everyone had completed the Decky questionnaire a month earlier. Reeve found that those teachers who scored high on autonomy support and those who scored as more controlling in the questionnaire showed distinctly different behaviors during the 10 minutes of puzzle solving, specifically the autonomy supportive teachers. Can anyone guess what would be the very obvious analysis after watching the videotape? What would these autonomy supportive teachers be doing while solving a puzzle with their student? Would anyone like to take a guess?
They'll be talking to them, counseling them, but they will not tell the solution. They'll just be giving hints and maybe, helping them with it. But
Yeah,
definitely not the solution. Solution, they let the child come to the solution and let him or her have the joy of solving the problem by themselves.
yeah. That's what I was thinking as well. Anyone else would like to take a guess?
हाँ, प्रश्न ये है रीना और साक्षी और स्वाति कि अगर कोई प्रॉब्लम है, तो अगर कोई टीचर है जो बच्चों को सपोर्ट करती है, तो उस प्रॉब्लम को वो टीचर कैसे बच्चों को हेल्प करेंगी? आप लोगों को कोई जवाब है इसके लिए? आप लोगों का क्या सोचना है इसमें? आप कैसे हेल्प करेंगी? अगर कोई बच्चा को आपको हेल्प करना है लेकिन साथ में उसको सपोर्ट देना है, तो आप कैसे करोगे?
Thank you, Meenakshi ji, for translating. It is always a very big help when our teachers can get some translations. Thank you. Okay, I'm not sure if they are able to hear us, or maybe they're not able to
Just
unmute.
trying so that they might answer. Otherwise, they feel a little, you know, conscious of doing so. So that's why that's all. They
Yeah,
have their opinions.
yeah. Thank you for doing that. So what the colleagues and the psychologists noticed after analyzing the videotape was that the autonomy given teachers listened to the students more, held the puzzle materials in their hands for a shorter time, avoided giving the puzzles solutions, gave hints in a limited and sparing way, expressed fewer commands, asked more questions about what the student wanted to do, responded more to student generated questions. For instance, the more controlling teachers made statements like, flip it over, can you make it like I showed you, and you've got to get the base first. On the other hand, the more autonomy supportive teachers said things like, which pattern do you want to start with? Now you're getting the hang of it, and I can see you're starting to get frustrated. There is an interesting finding that crops up here. Deki and intended option 4 in the story above to be a moderately autonomy supporting option. Each of his 8 stories contained an option like this, where the teacher appeals to comparison with others to encourage students to keep up with the other kids. But in all the research using his questionnaire, this option repeatedly correlates more with controlling than autonomous behaviors. So, Deki says that we should actually look at it as a slightly controlling behavior. To me, this suggests the interesting possibility that the pressure of comparison is a subtle or sometimes not so subtle control on our behavior, something that diminishes our sense of autonomy. It feeds directly into the ideas presented in box 2. How can we make teachers more supportive of their students' autonomy? Now, this is a very direct question that I would like to throw at the group right now. How would you want to make students' autonomy more supported in your classroom? What tactics would you do? What strategies would you like to supportive of your students' autonomy?
I think you have to put the teachers in the same position and make them appreciate their own their own preference for autonomy in a situation, and then say, I mean, basically drive home the point that even kids prefer that. So, you know,
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. Yes. Yeah. so that they can get to experience it before we preach it.
This
Yes.
comparison, this comparison bit that they've written about, if I remember my childhood, there was a lot of comparison between cousins and uncles and everybody. हर किसी का उस एज के टाइम को लेकर comparison हो जाता है, and you're not doing as well, sort of thing. And it it leaves you in a worried state rather than wanting to, feeling competitive and wanting to go beyond them. There are times when you feel very helpless. Okay, so that is one thing. If most teachers should remember this, because we live in a competitive world where we are asked to um go beyond our cousins, or young uncles and aunts and all those people. And it's always like you should do better, or you should at least be equal to them, if not better, something like that. Or you're not as good, something, it is not very easy to live with that sort of a comparison. And understanding, if we remember our childhood, then we will definitely remember all these things. I mean, these are the tricks people play with the children, so that whether it's our teachers or our parents, it doesn't matter. So that people may feel like working more, but it misfires most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. And it drives home a very different point, a very different message.
Yeah.
Thank you. Akansha, if you are here and if you're able to maybe engage with this question, would you like to give your opinion on this or something that you would like to say about this? How can a teacher support more of your autonomy? What can a teacher do?
Can you explain a little more briefly that
Sure.
what is students' autonomy?
Yeah. Suppose, would any of you like to do that instead of me doing it? Or I can explain it to Akansha.
So, Akansha, this chapter is on motivation, right? And the author started the chapter by saying that one of the ways that you feel motivated is if you feel that you're making this decision to do something or not do something yourself. If you have autonomy, right? Then you feel more motivated to do things versus being forced to do things, right? So that's the sort of background to this dialogue that we are having now around autonomy. And maybe now Nilashi can repeat her question.
Akansha, so the word autonomy, maybe just for the sake of understanding, I would use it synonymously with freedom. आपको क्लास में टीचर कैसे सपोर्ट कर सकती है ताकि आपको हमेशा ये प्रेशर ना फील हो कि आपको जो टीचर कह रहे हैं वही करना है, पर आपको जो करना आप चाहते हो वो टीचर आपको कैसा एनवायरनमेंट दे ताकि आप वो कर पाए जो आपको लगता है ठीक. Did you get the question now?
Yes, ma'am. I
Yeah.
think teachers should say like encouraging words to the
Mm.
students so that they can feel that they are free to do the work by, all by themselves, and the teacher should also stand before the students so that they don't feel scared if anything goes wrong in their work.
By that you mean not literally in front, but together with the student. They should make the student feel like they are one team.
Yes.
That's great. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you. So we will read further to see why this question has arisen in the chapter itself. Decky has looked at the kinds of external pressures that make teachers behave in particular ways. For example, when teachers are told that it is their responsibility to make sure that students perform up to standards, if they view this as a controlling demand on themselves, they will pass the pressure they feel onto their students. What applies to students also applies to teachers. I think this is exactly what Jugjeev sir was saying. If we want teachers who are intrinsically motivated to do their job well and who support their students' autonomy, we have to support their autonomy to be that way. In Decky's words, just as children need autonomy oriented classrooms to be intrinsically motivated and to perceive themselves as competent, teachers need an autonomy oriented context within which to benefit from feedback about their own orientations. I couldn't agree more. A good teacher can only be self motivated. Quality is not something that can be enforced from the outside or from above. One contributing factor is the information teachers receive about teaching and learning. And if anything can improve teaching in a lasting, genuine way, it is their informational feedback. It is the main reason that I felt a book like this one was needed for teachers. Another valuable emphasis that a teacher can bring into her classroom is the mastery orientation. This approach aims for every student to learn everything without worrying about the time taken to learn. It is based on the important assumption I can if I try, and students focus their attention and thoughts on effort. The typical alternative to a mastery orientation is something called a performance orientation, where students work in order to keep up with or outdo their peers. Success is measured in terms of performance relative to others. And even the teacher focuses on performance rather than learning. As a result, students focus their attention and thoughts on ability. The mastery performance distinction runs somewhat parallel. Yes, Meenakshi ji, please. You would like to
The
say something?
thing is, I don't think it can. Yeah, yeah. I don't think that there's any sure short method. Sometimes when we counsel and counsel and counsel and the person is not getting it, then we need to be authoritative as well and ask the person to just do it the way we are asking them to do it. And once they get a taste of it, they realize, okay. And so it has to be a mix of both. It cannot be just one method. Okay. Sometimes it's very difficult to explain something, and yet when you do it, you realize that, oh, this really works. So a leader or the school authorities or whoever they are, they need to understand where to do that. Unless they do that, neither of
Yeah,
these things are going to work. Neither of them. These.
yes,
So, if you think of of a circle, starting with motivation, action, and then results, many
Yeah.
times we want the motivation to come first. But Meenakshi brings out an important point. In real life, many times, if you force the action and the result comes, that creates the motivation. It's a very standard way to intervene in any situation.
My thing is that motivation, yes, we should go with motivation first. If it doesn't work, then we put in a little bit of a pressure. And obviously, once that pressure works, motivation will come. Doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's very tough many times to get motivation up front. If you force the action, the results
Yeah.
person will see and say, okay, this is great, and that will give the
Yeah.
motivation, and then it becomes a cycle.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
I
that is important. We can't just think in one plane. If we think in one plane, we are not going anywhere. So for me, I mean, when Jugji sir is saying the same thing, I'm sorry, I'm repeating what he's saying again, and but it matters to me. That's all.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Meenakshi ji. In fact, one of my mentors during teacher training gave me this example of giving medicine to the child and told me that if your student is not doing what you think he or she should do because it will be good for them, just imagine that you are doing this as a way to give them medicine, which tastes very bad, but it is good for them. And you, as an adult, and you, as their uh, confidant or someone who they trust, if you think that's right, do it for them. Have that motivation for them. And maybe they'll arrive at it. And give them that time to arrive at it on their own instead of drilling the point home. So I think what you and Jugji sir are saying is quite essential and uh, quite a different spin to the point that the book is driving. Thank you. The typical alternative to a mastery orientation is something called a performance orientation, where students work in order to keep up with or outdo their peers. Success is measured in terms of performance relative to others, and even the teachers focus on performance rather than learning. As a result, students focus their attention and thoughts on ability. The mastery performance distinction runs somewhat parallel to the individualistic competitive distinction I made earlier in describing classroom environments. The mastery approach can keep motivation levels high since students will attribute their failures to effort rather than ability. They will be motivated to persevere in the future. Mastery approaches also yield students who use more learning strategies, who move from can I do this to how can I do this. Box 2, born to compare. Anyone who spends even a little time around a group of children soon realizes that they are very aware of their relative levels of anything at a given time. A mastery learning environment where the teacher deliberately does not encourage comparison and allows each child to work independently is no exception. I would like to continue reading from this box too in the next session, but there's an important question for me as a person who holds the space here, Brewing Knowledge, as to what are your expectations from Brewing Knowledge for this year in the coming months ahead? What is it that you enjoy? What are some changes that you would like to maybe suggest for the community for your own joy, for your own pleasure to read together, to come together? और मैं हमारे हिंदी रीडर्स के लिए और जो लोग हिंदी में बात करना ज़्यादा प्रेफर करते हैं, मैं उनके लिए ये सवाल हिंदी में पूछ रही हूँ. आपको ब्रूइंग नॉलेज कम्युनिटी को बेहतर बनाने में आपके कोई सजेशंस, आपके कोई चेंजेस जो आपको लगता है कि हम ये चेंज करेंगे तो शायद आपको ज़्यादा अच्छा लगेगा, आपको पढ़ने में ज़्यादा मज़ा आएगा, अगर ऐसे कोई भी चेंजेस हैं या फिर आपका कोई फीडबैक है तो आप लोगों को प्लीज़ मेरे व्हाट्सएप मैसेज आपको मुझे व्हाट्सएप मैसेज भेजना चाहिए और आप ग्रुप पर भी पोस्ट कर सकते हैं. प्लीज़ डोंट बी अफ्रेड टू पोस्ट any feedback regarding the session on the group.
नीला नीलाशी, क्या ये पॉसिबल है कि मैं मतलब अपने टीचर्स के हिसाब से बात कर रही हूँ कि इसका जो मतलब एआई ट्रांसलेशन इन हिंदी क्लास को शुरू करने के पहले डाला जा सकता है? इज इट पॉसिबल टू सेलेक्ट एंड डू दैट? अगर वो पॉसिबल है तो हमारी टीचर्स जो हैं उसको पहले से पढ़ लेंगी और फिर उनको इंग्लिश वाला समझने में थोड़ा इजी होगा, बिकॉज वी वर्क इन दैट मैनर. हालांकि आई फील दैट कोई लैंग्वेज सीखने के लिए सबसे पहले उसको सुनना, उसको बोलना जरूरी है. लेकिन क्योंकि ये दूसरे तरह का क्लास है और वंस दे मिस इट, उसके बाद उनको पता ही नहीं चलेगा. तो क्या अगर वो पॉसिबल है तो वो बहुत अच्छा रहेगा. तब हो सकता है हमारी टीचर्स उसको पढ़ लें और उस पर थोड़ा बात भी कर पाए.
Sure, sure, I'll take a note of it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else who might have any suggestions? There's one suggestion that we are anyway working on after we had a session with Miss Ratna, that we would like to invite more authors and have the space become more about reading and reflection. So we'll be doing some artistic exercises as well with with some sessions in the future. Are there any more suggestions? Since we've already hit 6:15, I would invite all of you to please send me messages, send feedback on the session.
I just suggest that you start with what you want to achieve, right? And stay focused on that,
Sure.
right?
And
Because
yeah,
when we're reading this book, uh, what comes across to me, this is a fantastic book for teachers to become better, right? So
yeah,
while the reading and all that stuff is happening, but the idea really is that you think about how you can incorporate some of the things that you pick up in your own teaching. That's really the objective, right? And I don't know how the meet and greet last week was additive to that. Okay, I mean, I love the session, right? I think she's like really the most down to earth author I've come across. I enjoyed the session a lot, right?
yeah.
But I just don't think it fits in with what you're doing right now. So just be clear on what you're trying to do and focus on that would be my suggestion.
Sure. Jupji sir, maybe we can take the suggestion that you are giving here outside of this Zoom session because I have a few questions and I can ask you for more suggestions on this. Is that all right?
Yeah, no problem. Sure, anytime.
Sure. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great evening ahead. And thanks to each one of you who come on a Friday evening to form this collective to read together. Thanks a lot. See you
Okay,
next week.
bye.